The imagery of Cynthia Erivo and her flesh. The first moment where I caught myself was when Philippa Sue, played Mary Magdalene, is singing to her, "I'll take care of you." And they're like holding one another and cuddling one another. And like this moment of like, oh, Jesus is a queer woman. Heck yes.
Greetings and welcome to the Progressive Christians podcast. We are the love your neighbor kind of Christians and not the storm the Capitol kind. So if you're curious about what a socially and politically progressive Christianity looks like, then this is the podcast for you. My name is Reverend Dr. Christopher Carter, and I am your host. I am a professor of theology at Methodist Theological School in Ohio, and I am the lead pastor of the Loft Faith community at Westwood United Methodist Church in Los Angeles, California. If you like the show, we invite you to please rate, review, share, subscribe, and all that good stuff so that we can continue to bring you the content that we like to create that so many of y'all like to consume. Today, I am joined by the, I think I called it the Super Friends, is what we said.
The Super Friends, yeah.
Yep, the Super Friends. Got the whole entire crew here.
Oh,
exactly. And we are excited today because today we are actually celebrating the 1 year anniversary of the podcast. I don't know if we're supposed to be like, ooh,
yeah, I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Another example of time just keeps going.
It does, doesn't it?
Time does keep going. I remember back a year ago and I wasn't sure Trump was going to win. I was kind of like, he might not.
Yeah.
And now we're in hell.
Yeah. When we had hope.
For a minute.
My aunt started listening to the podcast after the election, but she started from the beginning, and she's like, it's almost too sad to listen to the pre-election episodes.
And your aunt shouldn't because
you all had so much hope. I'm like, yeah, I know.
Yeah, no, that's been
what fools we were.
But now we are more committed than ever to being a community of faith and justice and inclusion and love and belonging and fighting the patriarchy and the demagoguery and all the other things.
The fascism. What else are we fighting?
And the racism.
Wesley's fighting the capitalism.
I mean, we were committed to all those things before, but now it's like it's a new kind of pressure.
So we are celebrating that. So we're going to talk a little bit about just kind of reflect on what we've done for the past year. We're also going to talk about what we hope to do in the future, some plans we have coming up for this upcoming year. But before we do any of that, we're actually going to spend the first part of the mini-sode, because we're going to try to keep this one shorter, by talking about Jesus Christ Superstar. For those of you who may not have heard, there was a short, I think it was just a 3-night run.
It's a weekend run at the Hollywood Bowl.
Wow.
Of Jesus Christ Superstar, starring Cynthia Erivo and Adam Lambert. And well, actually I saw, because I have a child who watches Frozen, so I saw Josh Gad in there, and I was like, "Oh, Olaf!" Like that's what I think. So
yeah.
I was like, "Oh, he was in it too!" Wow. So anyway, Olaf was in it. It was all kinds of stuff happening, So before we get into the nuances of that, as you all who are longtime listeners know, actually, I would say this is everybody's wheelhouse except for me. So I maybe should step back. I was like, this is Julia's wheelhouse. Actually, you know what? It may just be me who doesn't really do the whole musical thing. But Julia, can you say a little bit about, for people who don't know what Jesus Christ Superstar is, kind of set the stage, set the framework for what we are kind of be discussing in a few minutes?
Yeah. Jesus Christ Superstar is a rock opera, also a passion play. Hadn't thought about that until Rev Blair mentioned it. Had never thought about it like that. Written in the late 60s, opened on Broadway in the 70s. It's been around, in my personal opinion. Sir Andrew Lloyd Webber, it's his greatest work, in my humble opinion. I don't know if anyone wants to argue with me about that. If it's like Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat or Sunset Boulevard, but I digress.
No, I really second that. I really second that being his masterpiece.
It's iconic. NBC, I think, did a live version on Easter maybe 10 years ago. What is time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with
starring John
it was during
Legend.
the pandemic, so it wasn't quite that long ago.
Oh,
but
was
with
it
John
during?
Legend. Yeah,
I felt like 10 years ago if it was during the pandemic.
Like a million years ago. Starring John Legend, the original and most iconic, I guess, Jesus was Ted Neely, who did that for 40 years. One of the things I like about it is that it's about Jesus's relationship with Judas and Jesus's relationship with Mary. but like Judas is kind of the protagonist of it. Like
Judas is the he's like the narrator. Like he's the prominent voice in the way
he's
that
the Aaron Burr for any of the Hamilton heads out there. Mm-hmm.
That's a good
very
one.
much
helpful.
so. So he's the Jesus is the protagonist, meaning the story is about Jesus, and Judas is the antagonist, but he is also the story driver. Like Judas is the one who tells the story. He is the narrator. He is the one who moves the action forward. God bless Adam Lambert, because Lord, his voice in that role was insane.
He was born for it. It was.
But so the point is that Julia, Everest, and I had the joy and privilege of getting to see it on opening night at the Hollywood Bowl.
Did.
And so we are bringing you first-person accounts of that experience.
Yeah, I was definitely jealous to see you guys like all going.
We did.
Well, I was jealous of the pictures. Actually, I'm not gonna lie. I was like, I've only been to Hollywood Bowl a few times. I was like, oh man, it looks like fun.
The bowl is fun.
Yeah. Anyway,
The bowl is great. It's my favorite venue in the world. There was controversy, however, because of casting. How can we can't move on without talking about which I didn't even realize. I didn't know that it was controversial. But of course.
Well, a whole lot of the world still thinks Jesus is a white man and can only be portrayed as a white man. So to have a black woman portray Jesus was
blasphemous.
Going to make some people really upset.
I mean, with the exception that it's a rock opera, and I don't know about y'all's conception of Jesus, but when I think of Jesus, I definitely don't think that he
was a
sang
tenor?
I don't believe he sang in English, if he did sing.
True.
And I don't think he was singing rock music, and I don't think he was singing opera. So like,
Well, I want to say a note on that, which is I get really obsessed with musicals that are really intentional about the genre that they choose. And so Andrew Lloyd Webber choosing rock and roll for the story of Jesus was really intentional, because it was like at this time that rock stars were like literally being treated as gods. And so I think the genre choice, while not what Jesus would have actually been using in his time, I think does really complement the story, because it is like when rock and roll was this new, groundbreaking, controversial music of the people that were trying to like overturn society, and kind of superimposing that on the story of Jesus. That is why I think it's his masterpiece. I think there's a lot of reasons, but I think that's like one of the really genius parts of it.
I think that makes so much sense. I love. I mean, the concept to me makes perfect sense. I just don't know why you would get upset about something that's like a made up, like a retelling of a a right?
No,
I'm
Dr.
like,
Carter. If white people can't see themselves in the main character, why would they? Why would it just get put on at all?
Why would they watch? Well, I want to say again, I'm gonna stop talking because I'm the one who does not actually watch this. So I'm gonna turn it over to y'all. But what I do want to share was Julia sent a link to Cynthia Erivo singing Gethsemane, and I was preparing for the podcast. I'm getting things together, and I'm listening to it, and I had to stop. I stopped my preparations because about 2 minutes into the song, she hit a note that felt like church, and that's just honestly in my gut. I was like, this. What she did in that song felt like, so Everest, to your point about it being rock, she brought this kind of gospel black church depth to this song and still stay within the genre of rock and roll that just was phenomenal. Like I was like, it was amazing. Like it was amazing. It definitely felt sacred in the ways in which it brings you to a deeper understanding of what is real, what is true. And it was powerful. So if the purpose of the musical is to help connect you to understand the story of Jesus and to have that kind of divine connection behind yourself, then she accomplished that, in my opinion. But again, I digress. I will step back to give the floor to y'all.
He yields back.
I yield.
Blair was sitting with me. I was sobbing.
Both of us just
sobbing.
Tears.
That lady got like a 5-minute standing ovation in the 75% of the way through the show.
In the middle of the show, right? I think it was 2 minutes they timed out. Standing ovation.
Standing ovation. It was profoundly spiritual. Like, my favorite book is the Book of Longings. This is my favorite like pieces of theater. Anything that humanizes Jesus, like the life of these people, is really important to me. Like, this is important work. And the idea, like, even hearing these lyrics that I've like heard since it's my mom's favorite musical. I've seen this show so many times. Hearing these lyrics sung by a Black woman was so important for me and my faith. Like the song Hosanna, why waste your time moaning at the crowds? Nothing can be done to stop. For there is not one of you who cannot win the kingdom. The slow, the suffering, the sick, the dead made me cry. Hearing a Black woman say these things, hearing a Black woman talk about Gethsemane, like she's tired, she's over it, she's done all this work. She was done. Like, it means a different thing, and it humanizes it in a different way. And so that was my experience. I yield back.
Well, I want to say about the Gethsemane scene, that is a part of Jesus's story that is like, well, I just really think about it all the time. And at that moment, I think the way that she sung it felt so holy, but the 2-minute standing ovation also felt really holy to me, because at that part of the story, that is like Jesus being like, I have nothing left. I need some kind of extra strength right now because I just like cannot do this. And it was so amazing to like have the audience pour into her at that moment in that specific way, because that is kind of like what God does in the story, which maybe that is a heretical thing to say. I don't know. But it felt like such a beautiful like recreation, including the ovation part of it. And I also think, well, and Cynthia Erivo is also queer. So I think it is really amazing to be like, this person has the intersection of so many oppressed identities and is on this stage. Also, she's so tiny. Like, that woman is an absolute powerhouse. And standing next to Adam Lambert, she looked like a child. It was so wild to me when she stepped out on stage, how small she is and how powerful she is. Like, I have been in the bowl many times. I have never heard it as silent as it was when she was singing that song. It was so powerful. I was also weeping.
Yeah, the imagery of Cynthia Erivo and her like flesh, right, and her fleshiness and all the things her being in the world represents was really powerful. And it started for me. The first moment where I caught myself was when Philippa Sue, who played Mary Magdalene, is singing to her, "I'll take care of you," and they're like holding one another and cuddling one another, and like this moment of like, oh, Jesus is a queer woman. Heck yes. Like, I'm on board. And then when we got to Gethsemane, because I've studied so much about womanist theology, right, which is Black women's theology, and the way in which suffering is different, feels different, that like the way in which redemptive suffering is challenged in the voices and experiences of Black women, because that, like, basically womanist scholars have said, like, it can't be God's purpose for me to suffer. Like, that can't be the answer. And so then to watch this Black queer woman sing, "God, thy will is hard, but you hold every card. I will drink your cup of poison. Nail me to your cross and break me. Bleed me, beat me, kill me. Take me now before I change my mind." And in our political moment, the number of Black women I know who we have seen in our political world, like, take hits and try desperately to save us from careening into fascism. And then the Black women I know in my life who have tried to save institutions from careening off into failure. And just for me, the sort of weight of what we have placed upon Black women in society, it was just magnified in that moment. And then, so there was nothing else to do but to stand and rise and sort of not just like honor her performance, but for me in that moment, it was like honoring the fullness of what our society has done to Black queer women in particular. And so that was one of the moments where I felt just deeply overwhelmed and deeply grateful that she and the whole cast were like brave enough to do this, because it felt like a political prophetic moment in the same way that I imagine Jesus going to the cross at the time was deeply political and prophetic. That moment just carried so much weight, and I wish everyone could have experienced it.
Wesley, I'm curious. Obviously we were the unfortunate, unlucky duo who didn't get a chance to see it. Just kind of like, I know you saw the clip as well, and you've been able to talk to Julie about it. So just like, kind of what were some of your thoughts and reflections on Cynthia playing Jesus, or just all the controversy that surrounded it, or anything like that?
I mean, I'm super jealous. I'll say it again, because I just hearing the three of you sort of like reflect on the various levels of meaning and the depth of meaning that was occurring, and then to think about the ovation that she received as providing the power, the extra energy she needed to finish. Like, it's fantastic. It makes me want to cry. It makes me jealous that I wasn't there. Philippa Sue being in it also, like, okay, if we have a time machine, I have to figure out how to make it work and then go back and watch this. I don't know the play. I don't know the musical. I have the contours of it, but I've never been able to see it. But I really have always appreciated any sort of like gender bending, any sort of opportunity that theater provides for people to step into roles that on paper may not be necessarily them, but gives them an opportunity to really inhabit a different body, a different perspective. And the way that allows for new meaning to emerge from things that are too familiar. So I'm just mad that I didn't get to see it, but it sounds beautiful.
No, it sounds amazing. Blair?
Well, and I also want to note that because it's a passion play, it doesn't end with Easter. It ends with Good Friday, and it ends with the death. And so then, of course, like the imagery of a Black woman being whipped, lashed 40 times. I was like, grab Julia's hand. Like, I don't know what I can do for you except be with you in this moment.
Different.
And like the weight of that was a different kind of experience. Like, it just clicked. It was like, oh, Jesus should have always been portrayed by a Black woman because of the alignment in these stories. But it, as a scholar and as a pastor, it's hard for me to know that it ends with Christ's death and not with Christ's resurrection, because it was hard for me to know that we just killed this Black woman and we didn't get to see her resurrect. And there's a curtain call and Jesus comes back on stage. Like, there is a beautiful moment, but it's not the same as what I think it means for Mary Magdalene. Just the power of Mary Magdalene in that moment, being played by Philippa Sue, this woman, this queer relationship. Like, if we could have had an Easter morning, I think we needed that hope. And so that's what's hard for me as a pastor, is that I'm respecting the piece of art for what it is, which is a passion play, which does not cover Easter morning. But knowing that so many people don't interact with the story of Jesus, don't interact with the gospel, and they were left just with the message that Christianity killed Jesus. That was hard for me, and I'm still like struggling with what to do with that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, even the idea of Christianity killing Jesus, when it's like this whole social political establishment, right? Like, because obviously Christianity didn't exist at the time. You're talking about, Judaism and the Roman Empire, but it's empire. It's systems and structures. It's the same things we've been talking about, killing Black women or Black people, Black bodies. With respect to James Cone's Cross and Unlynching Tree, does such a great job of elaborating on this. But Everest?
I was going to say that I felt the same way at first, but then I was thinking about how, like, another controversy this musical has had kind of throughout its lifetime is that it, quote unquote, secularizes Jesus, and that it really is portraying Jesus kind of only as a man and as a leader, but there's no miracles on stage. There's no, I guess, like, non-tangible
Divine
things happening.
realities.
And I saw it once before, like 7 years ago, and when I saw it that time, I was like, it's so weird that the resurrection is not in it. But then this time, I actually felt like the message that I took from that was that the most radical and sacred things about Jesus were not the inexplicable, miraculous things happening, but was like how he actually lived and was in the world and built community and built a movement and loved people. And I agree that it is very heartbreaking to end with the crucifixion. And I also think that it brings our attention to what is miraculous about the story without the literal miracles of it. And I think that also is a powerful thing. And in our current movements and in the current times that people are being killed by the empire, they're not coming back. Like, we are left with the movement that they leave behind, and we are left with that desolation to decide to like look at how they lived and decide what we're going to do next. And so I think in the also like superimposing the story on modern empire and modern white supremacy and modern violence in that way, it also gives us a roadmap of like, how do we look at our leaders now, our spiritual leaders now, and how can we carry their legacy forward even if they themselves are gone.
No, I thank you, Everest. I think that's, to me, what I hear you, a part of what I hear you saying that I think I want to build on before I toss to Julia, and then we kind of discuss some of the other things we want to talk about in the episode today. Y'all's description brings me back to the work of Dolores Williams and Sisters in the Wilderness. Basically, you know, and Blair, you were like gesturing around this when you're talking about her talking about the fact that there is no such thing as redemptive suffering. Like there is that's like the idea that somehow, you know, she talks about being a surrogate, like for suffering, that's what Black women have been. And she's like, you know, we don't, this is not salvific. Like, like carrying y'all suffering is not saving us. And so when she kind of thinks through a salvation theology that's actually relevant and connects with Black people, but particularly Black women and oppressed peoples, she talks about, to your point, Everest, like salvation isn't found in the death and resurrection. She argues that salvation is found in the ministerial vision of Jesus. It is in the work. It is in the love. It is in the justice, in the community. That is where we find salvation, is how we resist empire. And it's that resistance of empire that brings us closer to each other and closer to God. The death and resurrection, where she argues the death of Jesus, the crucifixion of Jesus, is like a desecration, basically. like this is there's a word she uses, starts with a D that it escapes me right now. Defilement. It's defilement. That's what she says. She's like, it's defilement. It's a manifestation of human sin, our failure to love. And for those of you who are listening to this, and you're like, oh my gosh, how is this Christian? You know, we have an episode on salvation where I talk about, we go through the moves of the fact that our theologies of salvation as Christians have evolved. We've had basically 4 templates for theology in 2,000 years. So the one we have now that you think has to be salvation is transactional, that required Jesus' death, is the most recent and newest one of the 4 we've had in the last, 2,000 years. So just hold your horses. In case you want to have a freak out. Julia, I know you have something to say, and then I want to spend a couple of minutes just celebrating us, celebrating y'all amazingness.
I just want to say musical theater is my favorite medium of art in the whole world. And this conversation perfectly shows why. And it's like what Wesley was saying earlier about like theater is a living art form every single time it's done, every night. Like even we went on opening night, Josh Gad was testing positive for COVID. And so we saw a different Herod. We saw John Stamos.
Uncle Jesse.
We saw Uncle Jesse.
You saw John Stamos?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Please keep going.
I really do hope they release a recording of it, because it was just such a beautiful cast, such amazing
But I think that that's part of the magic of it, is that it happened for those 3 nights. And It will never happen again. Because it wasn't a traditional 4-wall theater, there are videos that will live forever on YouTube and on the internet. Also, props to Sir Andrew Lloyd Webber, who was there on opening night.
He was, yep.
He's had a great year, but the understanding that like the piece is supposed to change and like move with us. That's why theater's special. It's not stagnant. It doesn't stay when it was made. It changes with consciousness. And like, I think it was just a perfect example. Everyone that saw it, people aren't even Christian and they want to see it.
Some things are meant to be ephemeral. They're meant to be fleeting. They're not meant to be held and owned. I support
Yeah.
that
I
perspective.
mean, I appreciate the fact that like he, put out statements and talked about how basically to say I approve of this, what's happening with respect to, having Jesus played by a Black woman. And for me, not that you necessarily need his permission, but just to get people to give a sense of credibility to it. It brought me to, to kind of the theological piece of it. When you talk about like who can be Jesus, who can portray Jesus, I immediately just thought of Matthew 25, in the judgment of the nations passage where, Jesus talks about where he says after people, get judged, I assure you that when what you have done for the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you have done for me. Like Jesus is saying, like, it's how you treat others. Includes all others, not just men. And so there's this, it's implicit to me in the gospel. That when we encounter people, when we treat people a certain kind of way, we are supposed to be interacting. I was raised to think that when you're interacting with someone, this person could be Jesus. That was something that was not foreign to me. So thank you for such an amazing recap. And as Wesley said, I'm jealous. I appreciate being able to watch the clips on YouTube, and maybe one day I will see it. Everest is already threatened to hold me hostage and make me watch Hamilton because I haven't seen that. So it's gonna be a lot of theater for me in the next several months. I want to close by honestly, like I said, just taking a few moments to celebrate
Our
the podcast.
anniversary.
Yeah, this is our 1 year anniversary.
Know what today is? It's our anniversary.
Yeah, see, we can sing.
What is
you don't know that
this?
song, Tony?
Oh,
So we
man.
went too black.
Okay, well.
Oh my
He's
gosh.
like, you've never heard of Tony?
No.
I'm like, oh,
and now I'm gonna
my
look it
gosh.
up on YouTube
Oh,
after and be more
gosh.
educated.
Sorry,
Is
we're
it three
black.
Tonys?
Yes,
Or
but
like
all
Yeah, but
spelled
it's
Tony.
differently.
They're all spelled
Oh,
differently.
okay. Cool.
Yeah,
cool,
this
cool,
is
cool, cool.
clearly in the black like spectrum of stuff that Julia and I know. But no, I'm proud of the work that we've done. I can't say that it's grown beyond my expectations because I didn't even have any expectations. So I guess maybe I was like, oh, let's do this thing. And, we're continuing to expand our reach. We continue to impact people and help people. And more than anything, I think people reaching out and communicating with us has given me a sense of hope. Like helped me realize like, oh, it's not just us who are angry and frustrated and looking for something different and trying to create community to resist Christian nationalism and fascism, Christian fascism, if you will, and all its shapes and forms. And I just want to let each of you know how much I appreciate you, how much I love you all. With it be the podcast I have with Wesley and Everest that are just like, that are really going to be deep in the weeds about politics, which I absolutely love. What Blair brings to the podcast with her just immense memory and her knowledge and history. Julia always making me laugh, always asking honestly the difficult questions in ways that I probably don't want to ask them, but just saying what she actually thinks and feels. And lest we forget, this was Julia's master plan. So this was
Never,
her idea.
No one ever forget. This was my idea.
We got to get around to implementing the other ideas you got.
I have so many good ones. Wait, you guys, what are your favorite ones that we've done? Episodes? I'll go first. I only ever ask questions that I have a really good answer to.
Okay.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought about like going through our last year and being like, what was a favorite?
Well, mine is recent. I really liked our Rapture podcast.
That was a good podcast. No, I thought that was deep. Man, I actually really liked the one we did for some strange reason on Project 2025. Like, I think
That was deep.
So
That was
You put
hard.
us through it reading that text.
I know. I was just like, I think because what it did, it just got me prepared. Like, I felt like everything that happens now, I'm like, yep, they wrote about that. They talked about that. Like, it was something that I felt like for me gave me a framework to understand kind of what's happening and to interpret it theologically. I thought was pretty interesting. So no, that probably is. I would say it's definitely up there, one of my favorite ones.
I'm really grateful that you all made me talk about my research. So I don't know if it's my favorite episode to listen back to, but I remember after we recorded that episode on like what is a progressive theology of evangelism, I for several weeks just had so much motivation because I was like, oh, maybe my work does matter to someone else. And maybe it is worth writing down and figuring out. And maybe I do have something like unique to contribute to the world. And so I just appreciate that you all have invited me to be part of this, because sometimes as a scholar or as a pastor, it can feel like you're, as Wesley often says, you're screaming into the void. But I at least get to intensely discuss and share with all of you. I'm not going to say I'm screaming at you, because I don't think I am, but like at minimum, having like conversation partners in my own work has been just so transformational for me and my ministry and my spirituality. So thanks for being my spiritual community.
I mean, I am a listener more often than I am a guest, but the podcast is like such a good space for me and for people that don't live here and get to go to church with all of us to like feel heard. I think all of the episodes post-election I was listening to, and I know all of you personally, and I was just like, these are my buddies talking about how scary everything feels right now. And we also had a lot of conversations off the pod about it. But I think that it's funny because I'm like, those episodes are not my favorite, but they were like the most comforting and important to me, because
So necessary.
I was like, I don't know what to do right now. I mean, that's how everyone felt. And I think it was so clear the ways in which the election happened because of Christian nationalism and what a huge role that played. And I think it was the podcast was a good space to bring a crisis of faith to be like, we actually still are going to choose this and do this. We haven't lost. We haven't, we're still not like giving up on this. And so I think those were my favorite. And I always love when I get to be here. Those are my favorite.
We love having you.
I don't know. The one that you and Wesley did on ice, basically, that's also a very, well downloaded one. Because that was just crazy. But I mean, we're seeing that right now in DC right now with respect to the whatever. So anyway, that's another podcast. We can talk about that later. Wesley, what's your favorite podcast?
Yeah, we will, I'm sure.
Wesley, we're going back to you.
Yeah, no. Do I have a favorite? I've obviously
He
listened
hates
to them all, and no. I really appreciated your conversation on why are you still a Christian. I think that was a good, because it, not only are we posing this question to the listeners, but we're also asking it of ourselves. And I think that reflection is always really important, especially as we careen into whatever is coming next. From the onset, this podcast or any sort of like outreach of this sort has always felt like we know that, I know that I live in a bubble. I personally like the bubble that I've helped foster, and it keeps me safe. It keeps me sane. It allows me to move through the world in ways that I feel confident about. And so to be able to share a little bit of it to people who don't live in Los Angeles, who don't have a supportive Christian environment around them, who don't have people who share values in the same way, it's really life-giving in a lot of ways, because I know my friend group, I know the found family that I have here. We all know what we think. We all talk about it. We all feel very aligned. So it's rare that there's a new opportunity to help someone else sort of clarify their beliefs. And so that is something that I think this podcast has helped do, with just reading the letters that we've gotten from listeners and seeing how all of this has been helpful in their own understanding of their spirituality. So, I'm excited for that to grow. I'm always surprised where our listeners are coming from. I think I got a note from someone from Florida recently, and it's like, that's crazy, because Florida, that's a crazy state sometimes. You've got a whole meme about you, Florida man. Like,
God bless you, Floridians.
So, yeah, I think I'm excited to see how people are able to further engage, but also be able to start fostering that type of community wherever they are, and maybe using these episodes as a tool to help bring people along with them.
It's so good to see the comments and read the emails, because when I went through my deconstruction, I was an island. I lost my mind. I was so isolated and confused, and like I didn't have resources. or a community, or like, I didn't know any of y'all then. I was just by myself out there. Like, and so being able, like, knowing that maybe there are people that can access this now when they're in that, even if they are in Florida or like somewhere else, that they might not have a community.
As long as Florida keeps the internet, I think they're fine.
So far, right? But that, like, it feels like ministry, and it feels good to know that, like, you know, maybe not everyone. It's not a good feeling. It's not a good feeling, that because it's hard. It's really painful.
I mean, I think that, you know, again, to the point of Blair's research, like, this is evangelism in a way that I never thought about. And so as someone who's like had to grow to become comfortable with that and see what that looks like today, this has been really helpful for me. And Everest, you know, our plan, our goal is to have, again, you're the only person who people have left comments on requesting, like, you know, so clearly, like, you know,
everybody
so
loves
people are
what they want.
Everest.
Exactly. So frequent guest, part of the family, and now officially part of this podcast, Super Friends. So we will keep it like that. Well, thank you all for listening. Thank you all for subscribing. Thank you all for watching us on YouTube. And yeah, just honestly, just thank you all for giving us the it's almost like I'm kind of brought back to the thing you said earlier, Everest, with respect to people, you know, giving the energy, like giving Cynthia Erivo the kind of courage to keep going. And I think so much of what we've gotten from this podcast has been that kind of encouragement, that we need each other, and that collectively we can get through this thing and come out on the other end and create something new. So thank you for joining us for the Progressive Christians podcast. The Progressive Christian podcast is a ministry of The Loft, a worship community of Westwood and Methodist Church. If you'd like to connect with us, you can follow us on all social media platforms at The Progressive Christians. Shout outs and thanks to our amazing audio engineer, AJ. Please rate, review, share, subscribe to us, especially if you're watching on YouTube. Please subscribe and like. That is a meaningful way to support us, as we are trying to be paywall free until we have to start paying Julia for her idea. So
we could never actually afford Julia if we paid her what she's worth.
I know we couldn't. Thank you all for joining us. We'll see y'all next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.